Now we have a catch up. Since we did this video channel, I've now come across a couple more pieces of information. First is this. When the throwout trial occurred in August 2018, it was advertised in the newspaper. And a mystery caller, according to Ian Jackson, a friend designer, called him and told him of the court case. Mr. Ian Jackson, according to his statement, said he then got in touch with Terry Bond, who was an old compatriot and friend from Wolverhampton Wanderers, who then, Mr. Terry Bond, got in touch with Roger Wyand from Brown Jacobson. This person, Ian Jackson, had just come on the scene. At that particular time, no one knew, from 1979, who he was. He secreted himself away from the world, and not one single person in the whole world knew who he was, till he was flushed out of the woodwork by this case. Brown Jacobson, who needed a lifeline, as they knew they were going to lose the throwout case in London, piled down his house a few days later to talk to him. And this Mr. Ian Jackson produced this. This acetate design, which he said he'd found amongst his documentation. And in his first statement, which has disappeared now, he said that this acetate design is the original design that he produced to Harry Marshall in 1979 to put onto the Wolfhead shirt. Now, I've done a second video and I've discussed this on the second video, and that second video proves that this Wolfhead on here is not the Wolfhead that was put on the 1979 shirt. It's this one. The border doesn't exist on the 79 shirt, neither does the colour. We're talking about the Wolfhead and the shape of the Wolfhead based on a circle. Mr. Jackson's design isn't based on a circle. So, my opinion is this. This design was concocted as of recent to justify that statement. There's no other reason for it. And it's my reasonable suspicion that when Mr. Jackson said he received a phone call from a designer friend of his, this designer friend was never brought to court. Now, Brown Jacobson were trying every single lifeline to bring people to court to prove my evidence to be false. Now, surely they should have brought this mystery designer friend of his to court, because this designer, obviously, when he rang him, he knew Jackson, he knew what he'd done, he knew the story of Ian Jackson, so he was the major witness statement in Jackson's defence. They decided they weren't going to bring him to court. He was never brought to court. He was forgotten all about, and the judge wasn't told about these events either. So the judge couldn't make a decision on the scenario that had happened. It wasn't discussed about this mystery caller, and it was kept secret from the court by Speck and Bonita Trimmer, which is the way they actually work. And it's the way they build a case up against you, by omitting your truth, my truth, and putting their rubbish in to replace my truth. It's my opinion that this mystery caller who spoke to Ian Jackson on the day of the throwout, or a couple of days after the throwout trial, is the Jonathan Russell who did the border design in 2002 I'd always thought over the years there had to be a link between my original wolf head design, which was singular wolf on a shirt in '79, and then the second progression of my design by this Jonathan Russell in 2002, which completed my painting competition entry design from 1963. The coincidence is unsurmountable, and the odds are just unbelievable that that could possibly happen. Especially being as a judge justified that the wolf head designs on the Cyril Cowell poster were done by me and belong to me. Right, there's another point of catch up here, and that is this witness statement from Bonita Angela Trimmer. If you recall in an early episode, Bonita Angela Trimmer said she'd found the information about my bankruptcy in the local Gazette. Well, I had my suspicions of that statement because I know the Gazette doesn't go into detail about bankruptcy. It tells you about bankruptcy, and she'd have to go back to 1996 to find this out. So it'd have to be all sort of coincidence and guesswork, really, to be honest, to get to that point. And even if she did read the Gazette, she wouldn't get that information. So I knew she'd got it from the book because she knew I'd written the book, but that wasn't stated in her witness statement. She said she got the information from the Gazette. So I did research on my book because I'd only sold 2 books up to that point. And lo and behold, when I spoke to my publishers, they told me that Bonita Angela Trimmer had bought one of my books in 2018, March 2018. Now, if you look at Bonita Trimmer's witness statement, it's dated the 1st of June 2018. So she had 3 months to read that book. And that's where she got the information about my bankruptcy. She didn't want to talk about the book because for obvious reasons that I explained earlier on. She tried to discredit me by saying I knew about the bankruptcy and all this sort of thing and the details about it, which I didn't. The second thing about Bonita Angela Trimmer is this, is that we go back to that Tony Marshall voicemail, which I played you in one of the episodes, which was a crucial point for Spec to convince the judge that I was lying, that I'd been lying. And you can read, you've obviously read all this in the early episodes. But what I want to say about that is this. First of all, I taped Tony Marshall because I just didn't trust anyone to tape. Well, first of all, I taped Tony Marshall because I know no one had took my word for it anyway, because I'd had experience of their underhanding this from Barker Battelle and the library experience when they tried to glean information out of me unknown to me. So I decided to tape everything from then on if I possibly could. So I taped the Tony Marshall conversation about Bernard Brett, etc. And I sent them this tape to Lawrence Abramson, who sent, it was on a stick. I taped the voice conversation on a sort of a voice recorder, but then I transferred it to a stick, you know, the small sticks you can buy for a few quid. And they said the first stick was gobbledygook, rubbish, couldn't understand it. So I sent them another one. And they prearranged that they were going to come to the throw-out court on the 1st of August, and they were going to bring this second stick with them and go over this second stick with my original recording of Tony Marshall. So on August the 1st, after the trial, we all went to the foyer. There was Bonita Angela Trimmer, Alex Sapowski, Roger Wynyard, Ed Bridle, my barrister, and Lawrence Abramson, my solicitor, and myself. We sat down in the foyer and I played them this recording of Tony Marshall from my recording, and it matched their recording, the second recording I'd sent them, exactly. And they all agreed, and they all left quite happy with the events and the situation. Now, what started to proceed in the court, all that had changed. They'd actually, this Mr. Speck, he's got a knack of taking something which you can use against you and basically spin tales about it in front of the judge to convince the judge you're lying. Well, this Mr. Speck, he then said to the judge that they'd had 5 copies of this voice recording, which was lies, and I never sent them to. And the second one they'd already justified as being exact copy of the one that we discussed at the High Court. So all of a sudden, 2 voice recordings had changed to 5, and then Speck had played one of them, and he'd been messing about with the second one or the third one or the fourth or fifth one, which he said. And there appeared on the voice recording a lot of blips and alterations of broken up voice of Tony Marshall. So immediately this led the judge to have a mistrust that someone had been meddling with the tape, and they pointed out that it was me. Because the judge couldn't understand what reason they would want to mess with the tape. It had obviously got to be me. And the judge in his statement says it was to make things to my advantage. Well, there was nothing on that tape to give me any advantage over anybody except the truth. But as I said to you in the later episodes, the judge was never told about the witness statements from Tony Marshall and his sister Susie Rovers, which was completely opposite to what was spoken about on the tape. So what the actual tape did, it proved to the court, or it would have proved to the judge had he listened to it, had Speck told him about it, that it wasn't me who fiddled the tape, it was them. Because the reason why they did it, and he asked this question in his stating up, his summing up, the judge did, he can't understand what ulterior motives there would be for me to meddle with the tape. Well, obviously he couldn't understand because Speck never told him, which is the evidence there that it was never brought up in court and never discussed with the judge. So they discredit me they took a long and lengthy time with this voicemail, and they tore it to pieces, reassembled it in the way that they would reassemble it to benefit themselves. So that's the second part of Bonita Trimmer's underhanded ways and lies, and it justifies what I said originally about her. The last thing I would ask all of you is this, is that once you've read, or if you read individually each episode, try and give me a shout out or ring the bell or put me on record for doing this, or even subscribe. I mean, I don't know what subscribe means. I think it gives you a bit of money for this and that and the other. Try and do that if you can. The reason why I ask you to do this, and maybe even buy a few copies of my book and read that. It's a good read. Actually, it's amongst the good reads, although it's never been publicised. That's probably why I haven't sold many. But it's a good story. Let me just show you a little article in the book, and you might be interested to buy it. Right, here's my family tree in the book. These are sketches I did myself and my family. And it'll show you what's in the book. Really, the book's got nothing to do with religion. I don't know why I headed it religion, just one of them things. I suppose it was my mum's teaching of things that happened, and the strange things that happened in the house and all, because there was a lot of weird things went on in that house, which you can read about in this book. But basically, let me just narrate to you who there was. Elsie was an angelic type of person, and then we got Arthur, who was her first son from her first marriage. He was just a brute. He was in the army, heavyweight boxing champion in the army, and he was a military policeman, and he told me loads of stories about what used to go on in the prison cells and such. So that was an interesting article in the book. And then we got Freddie, which was his dad, which could have been my dad, I'm not sure, because the animosity Tommy Davis, who lived with us at that time, he used to torture me and beat me up and lock me away, which is the reason why I got the determination in my mind to do things. And from that day onwards, I've always been determined to prove the truth and carry on my determination to the end. And that's why I'm like I am, and this is why I can go through this Wolverhampton Wanderers thing and bring it to you. Many years ago, this is not my only determined attempts at justifying something. Many years ago, I bought my son a bike and someone stole it from him off the Scotlands. I bought the Scotlands for 10 months, found one of the kids had got a tyre on his bike, and eventually, after all my discoveries, I found out who the person who stole it. He got a little factory building bikes, and that was my determination then. So this Wolves thing is just a continuation of that determination. Anyway, then we got Jeff, another one of my brothers. He was a dancer, entertainer. So there's some interesting stories there about Jeff. We go on to Barry. Barry was the criminal in the family, the gangster. So we've got a lot of stories about Barry. Joyce was in the Wrens, the Women's Royal Nursing in the Navy. She married a guy, Dennis, who was a petty officer on the HMS Wizard in the war. And when they went to Australia, he turned out to be gay, and they had 4 kids, and they put these kids in a home. I can't name the home, but they were severely treated, violently, sexually treated, beaten for years and years and years. And when Mike came out of this home, he joined the police and exposed them all. They paid him off. So this place they went to paid them off to keep it secret, and they ended up sort of coached for the rest of their life. But they were scarred, their memories were scarred all their lives, you can tell. But I was going to call that, I was going to name that from the Wizard to us, like from the HMS Wizard to Australia, but I never got round to it. And there's a lot of legal issues that I can't really write about it. I'm trying to think about it at the moment, but maybe that might be my next project once I've cleared all this up. Then we got me. I've got a question mark next to me because I don't know where I come from. I mean, I could be anybody's. That's probably why the reason why Tommy Davis probably detested me and used to beat me severely when I was a kid. Maybe I'm somebody else's. We got Tommy, who I've got down as a demon, a devil, which he was. Terrible, evil person. Val was my spastic sister. Stories about her, which you'd be really interested. I call her spastic because that's what they called in them days, spastics. They don't call it now, it's not allowed basically, is it? Ron, you know about Ron LaCourte. He went on to be bank manager, systems analysis, and then this spec obviously discredited him in court as well. Then we got Di. Di was my eldest, one of my elder sisters. She died when she was 50. But there's some stories about Di in there as well. She was a bit of a one. And lastly, we got the story about Dave. So the book is really, really interesting. And if you could find your way to buying the book, here it is once more. I'm going to plug it because it was started by Benita Angela Trimmer. Yeah, there's a little article on the front which you can read about what it's about, really. But as I said, it's not about God and religion as such. It's about weird happenings, demonic happenings sometimes. Anyway, let's go back to what I was talking about. So if you could sort of buy the book, you'd have a good read. I mean, with this COVID being around and the rubbish they put on the television, it's going to be a good read for you. And I'll guarantee you that any royalties from this book, I think I'll get about £2 for every one I sell. Any royalties from this book, royalties from any bell ringing or anything I'll get off the internet, and anything I'll get for subscriptions. I'm going to do my ambition to get a guide dog trained for some blind person somewhere, some needy blind person, I mean, my love of dogs and my love of animals, and then we've got Dave's story, which is in the book, of how he suffered all his life through his lack of vision. So I've got a passionate desire to do something good for someone, which I've always wanted to do good for people. Matter of fact, if you look at the book, the first sentence in the book says this sort of thing. It says, ever since my first thought in action, there has always been something necessary for me to do for the benefit of others, and that's really how I've led my life. But money obviously restricts you from doing these things, and I was totally shocked when I got in touch with the Dogs for the Blind, and they told me it was 65,000 to train a dog. Maybe I might get that. But if you think about it in this context, there's around about 30,000 Wolves fans go to the Molyneux. If every one of you bought a book, or even half of you bought a book, that'd give us probably enough to buy one dog. I mean, you're not going to the match, are you, because it's COVID. You're 50 quid a week better off. I mean, 7 quid wouldn't be a bad idea to invest in something like that. And it'd give me a satisfaction knowing that Wolfie had actually done some good as well. And who knows, I could probably get, if it did take off that way, I could probably get someone from the club to get involved with the charity as well, and we could do it together, and maybe present the dog on the stadium, on the grounds, once we got rid of this horrible disease. Who knows? So, but that's some of my plans for the future. You always have to plan ahead, I think, and if you sit around and do nothing, you just stagnate. So that's really it for the time being. I intend carrying this channel on, doing some art. I mean, I still do artwork. There's a bit at the back of me. It's a bit of my artwork. Do it in oils. I don't do much of that. I do more or less ceramics now, which I'll put on the internet as well, and put on the channel, show you what I'm doing. Maybe you might want to buy one or two of them, who knows. But as I said to you, that's the progression up to date now of what's gone on. As I said, I'm going to do research, more research. I'm certainly going to research this Jonathan Russell and see what links he's got to this Ian Jackson. And I've got a pile of paperwork in there from the case. I mean, I've only showed you a small percentage of the paperwork, and there's a lot more to look at as we progress. But I want to see how this, the story of the copyright case progresses at this time, because there's no point in just chasing your tail, is there? If nobody's interested, there'll be no point in me progressing with it. But the main thing is this: is I feel better for it, because now you know the true story. I mean, a lot of you were upset about like me sort of approaching Wolves about the Wolf, but the Wolf will always be at Wolverhampton. It's not about Wolverhampton Wonders Football Club anymore. If it ever did get back into a high court, it'd be this Ian Jackson. I mean, Foshan had got no knowledge of what Ian Jackson did in 1979. So you can't say it's to do with Foshan. It's nothing to do with Foshan. Foshan are a good company. They've dragged that club from the pits, really. I mean, the previous managers and whatever they had before, well, I don't need to comment on them. You all know what they were like. So you've got a good club now, and I would hope it would go on and on and on. And every time I see the Wolves progress, it cheers my heart up to know that the truth is now out there, and you know the truth as well. So let's finish this now, and then I'll see you again soon. We'll do another blog after this. This won't be the end, and may your God go with you.